You're now plugged into the Delphi podcast.
Sir James, welcome back on the podcast. It's your second time now. I think it's about 2 or 3 years on since the first time you were here. So yeah, super excited to catch up on all of the latest with JAMBO. Maybe for those that didn't tune into the first one, you could give us a quick high-level summary on kind of who you are, your background, and then let's jump into JAMBO.
Yes, sir. Now, first of all, appreciate you having me on the pod. I'm James, co-founder and CEO of JAMBO. Ethnically Chinese, grew up my entire life in Central Africa, DRC, family's third generation from there. Ended up New York, studied computer science, got into crypto. Essentially started JAMBO because I realized cross-border payments, remittances, banking and bank, basically all issues that I grew up with in Africa, right? Continent of over 1.4 billion people, 54 countries. Even some of these very simple financial tasks are still very hard there, or you pay a lot of middleman fees. But essentially realize all these issues begin and end with mobile, as whether it's Africa, Latin America, which is the largest market right now, or Southeast Asia, it begins and ends with the mobile infrastructure as people skip the PCH. So that's how we started JAMBO.
Awesome. A lot of people go on very long-winded rants when you ask to do a high-level summary, but nailed it. I appreciate that. So yeah, would love a bit of a refresher for the audience as well. Like, what is JAMBO?
Yes, sir. So JAMBO, we're building the largest mobile on-chain infrastructure and network. Essentially, when you come into the JAMBO phone, there are 20 apps pre-installed. First of all, let's just put a scenario here. Say you're a 19-year-old in Sao Paulo, Brazil, our largest market. You see the phone, $99. It's cheaper than any other smartphone you see on the market by at least 20%. You buy the phone, you come into it, you see the slogan, the phone that pays. You're intrigued. You're like, James, how does this even work? Come into the phone, there's 20 apps pre-installed. Only one of them is the JAMBO app, which is your multi-chain wallet, which supports over 13 chains at the moment, and your questing platform. It tells you what to do in all of the other 19 apps to turn your time essentially into getting their tokens as rewards, being part of the community. And then we provide you an on and off ramp in over 100 countries right now. So we like to think of it as a way, you have a phone, you have a job. Now, the big vision for JAMBO is honestly to become the on-chain Apple, right? At hardware, phones, communication, DPIN, and self-built apps are all fair game at the moment. We essentially want to create and solve the largest issue of crypto at the moment, the choke point, essentially onboarding and accessibility. Now, onboarding, whether you talk about emerging markets or crypto native or like native tech users in the States or Asia, is still a very tough process right now with most Web3 applications. And then obviously the accessibility, whether you can even connect to the internet, to these apps and how to use it. Really excited to dive into any of these areas.
No, absolutely. I think we'll double click on the kind of evolution into the mobile product in a minute. But just to give people a sense of where you guys are at, as I say, it's been, I think, 3 years since we first met, 3 and a bit. And yeah, been super excited to see where you guys are at. Maybe you could give us a snapshot summary, like what are some of the like headline ecosystem growth numbers to give people a feel for where you guys are at?
Yes, sir. So we started, it took us, so we did our, like, I think when I hopped on the pod last, it was in 2022 towards our Series A, right? When Paradigm led our Series A in like Q1. Basically in these last 2.5 years, we've set up our supply chain for phones. We have 3 factories, in Asia that we can do large numbers without having supply chain issues. And we've opened distribution channels to over 100 countries. Now, some numbers. In 2024, we did over 700,000 units of JAMBO phones sold to over 100 countries, like closer to 128. Created 6.6 million wallets. And I think most importantly is have now a very solid community base around the world, and honestly, a lot of different languages. But yeah, some high level on JAMBO, these stats.
No, that's awesome. And I'll be sure to link the June dashboard as well with all the latest ecosystem stats, because it's actually ticked up. I was having a look at it before this. It's like over 7 mil wallets now as well, which is cool to see. So yeah, love to see that expanding, and kind of seems like it's starting to hit a bit of a escape velocity. So yeah, maybe you could talk us through the journey of deciding to build the mobile product, because when we first met, I didn't feel like this was as core to like the idea. And now, like, obviously choosing to tackle something like this is, a pretty tall order to go after. So talk us through the decision to like go after that, and yeah, maybe a little what that process looked like.
Yes, sir. So there's a reason, right? Like usual companies and also software, VCs invest in software. You don't have hardware to go to market because there's just intricate things that are built into hardware that's just much tougher than software. So Jumbo used our phone as a go-to-market strategy, even though we don't position ourselves as a phone company, which is crazy to say when your main product is selling over 700K units of a phone. But it's that we're here to onboard, right, and bring accessibility to crypto and provide people that mobile infrastructure to use. And we always talk about the next billion users. Now, we use the phone as a go-to-market strategy. Honestly, I think a lot because of the way that my co-founder and I, which is my sister, and our company is set up where we have a lot of access to various distribution channels around the world. And then also being Asian, being Chinese, we are able to source from the supply chain hardware factories in Asia and keep the cost low. Because if this phone was say 300 or not even 300, say $200 even, I don't think this can accomplish even half of what we're looking at today, because that automatically, what, $120 in most emerging markets is like, say, Oppo, Vivo for a phone. $140, you go up 20 is like a Huawei, another 20 Samsung. So for each of these, there's like huge competition. Now, the reason why we keep it very low cost and for our users is a lot because for them, that is honestly the first choice we want them to make. Whether they haven't heard about crypto, they can already be using our phone. Some stats we see is like 5 to 6 hours of DAU on our phone for a lot of our Power community members. And that just shows people are using it honestly just as a phone natively rather than thinking about it purely from crypto. So I don't know if that answers, but honestly, a phone as a go-to-market strategy was something that we had to do to own the entire vertical integrated stack of our users. Because let's say this, right? Like I'm Chinese, even though I grew up in Africa, you grew up around super apps. I think I brought this up on the last pod as well. But when you grow up around a super app like WeChat, Alibaba in China, how did that start? From messaging. But now you pay your electricity bills, you buy your flight ticket, you transfer money to your friends. It's like your Venmo, your Expedia, everything rolled into one. Now, the only way they can do that is because they have a lot of data that can triangulate and give you a credit system. And I know a lot of people listen to the pod is like, oh, that's against the ethos of a lot of things to have data and stuff. But without data, you honestly can't bridge a human being to the global financial system. Because even if you like say there's 1.4 billion people in Africa, over 50% unbanked, even if you airdropped a non-custodial digital wallet to everyone in the region, congrats. So you like onboarded the entire region to have a wallet, but they still don't have access because they don't have credit, right? Like your phone numbers, your INES domain. So for us, a big part is providing that credit system through owning the infrastructure, which comes in the form of the phone, the hardware, and then to provide value on and much other services.
Absolutely. I mean, it's an incredibly valuable place to end up, right? Like actually sort of owning that full hardware stack. I think there's a lot of defensibility that comes with that. And I mean, we'll touch on it downstream in the pod, I guess, around, what this means in terms of, curating pre-installs, all this kind of stuff. And yeah, becoming like a really formidable distribution network. I wanted to just double click though. You mentioned obviously you had like these 3 factories in China, like it feels like you guys have really nailed the infrastructure to deliver this. Like maybe you could talk us through like, $99 price point, like how much is it costing you to make these things? Like what are some of the kind of unfair advantages that you guys are able to kind of leverage in facilitating this? Because for those that haven't seen, if you look at like the side-by-side spec comparisons of this relative to stuff that's like actually at a much higher price point at like $150, $160, like it has all of the kind of stuff that are the key differentiators basically at this lower price point. So yeah, maybe we could get some insight into how exactly you guys have achieved that.
Yes, sir. So I'll just scope out real quick for everyone, because everyone's probably on this pod very knowledgeable about crypto already if you listen to Delphi pod. But let's say hardware sector in crypto right now, you see various hardware devices, etc. Right? You might be like, okay, Jumbo is cheaper than them, probably did a bit more sales, ships to a bit more countries. Is it that much more special? I'll just put this like as an order of magnitude in perspective. Most hardware devices in Web3 right now are no shade at all. Like I buy most of them, I use them, it's serving different purposes, right? Most of them are dealing in the 10,000 to 50,000 units, say like under 6-figure units, and shipping to primarily US, Canada, and maybe a few other like main countries. For us, and usually when these products come about, it's a lot of pre-sales, a lot of wait X amount of months, a lot of time. For us, we can have 100,000 phone orders today, have no supply chain blockage, ship to over 100 countries at the moment. I don't say 120 specifically because each country is constantly changing a lot of the things. For example, Turkey is having certain policy changes, and we're working locally to get our shipping still as fast as the 30 to 45 days that we promise. But essentially, that's some of sort of the way the company is set up. Now, supply chain wise, yes, $99 is what you see for the phone. $69 is our cost, just straight up on the pod. $69 out the factory. Now, the other $30, you have to pay customs tax, you have to pay shipping tax, you have to give your distributors a cut and percentage as well. So JAMBO makes $0. We break even, and we're very happy doing so. Our power doesn't come from making money from a traditional phone company. Otherwise, there's no way you can have a 12 gigabyte RAM phone, 128 gigs of storage, no lag playing FPS games, at $99 if you're making profit on it. The whole point of the phone and our unfair advantage is that we can, I guess, source, ship, distribute, and also iterate at a fast feedback loop for the apps that are pre-installed for our users.
Awesome. No, I love all of that. I also, just really quickly before we kind of move on from the mobile product, maybe you could talk us through as well, just like the iteration from like the first JAMBO phone to the where you guys are now. Like, what was some of the like initial feedback and like testing? Because I know, you very kindly delivered me my custom one, which is very cool. Still rep it on the desk here. Yeah, what was that process like?
So JAMBO Phone 1, right? Our very first product. It was honestly, we were very happy with it. The only issues we had was only after we started hearing some community feedback, and I'll just give it to you guys straight. In JAMBO Phone 1, the camera was probably one of the biggest feedbacks. That's just something that's however much you pay is what you're going to get, and we just could not make the camera like it's not better than the phone that you're holding wherever you are, right? That's just something that's very tough to spec out without going higher in cost. Second is around some of the apps pre-installed, specifically one of the gaming apps had a small lag. Due to, I guess, some of the specs on the phone. And we were really unhappy about that because we really pride ourselves in giving our user a good product to actually use as a phone instead of just like a Web3 product. So yeah, I think those two are the two main problems that we had the phone 1. And also some shipping issues, to be honest, where when you start shipping to like over 100 countries, timelines, delays, we built out an entire customer service and support team in various languages like Brazil's Portuguese, Latam, Spanish. In Africa, a lot is French. Like we cover all bases now. But essentially, that's a lot of what went into the JAMBO Phone 2. I think we tripled the specs and kept the same cost. So we're proud of that. But most importantly, we changed a lot of the pre-installed applications that was in the phone as well. And I could go into how we vet that process. But end of the day, like JAMBO doesn't want to play God. Like, hey, you guys have to use this chain or use this phone and use this app to get this thing, right? JAMBO is supporting 13 chains right now inside of our wallet or more. We're never going to go above 20 because that's just as many apps that doesn't dilute the brand on your front page and etc. With that being said, though, we are launching on Solana, and all of our payment rails and instead of systems set up inside the phone is SPL and on-off ramps and USDT. And a big part of that I can dive into later as well, but it's because of the presence that Solana honestly already had in many parts of the world that we're in, where it's just seemingly they want the consumer side being the consumer chain. And there's just a lot more tether out there in the world, probably not where a lot of the listeners are listening here from London or from the US, but in say Brazil and Argentina. I'll give you guys an example. A few of our employees, probably actually like all our employees on payroll in Argentina, deep bear market 2023 Q2 is still asking us for USDT tether as payment, even though they might lose like 3% on inflation, etc. They gain a lot more than getting local currency. So I think for many places around the world, like we'll get into stable coins, etc. But that's also a big sort of mission for us when developing our products.
That's super interesting. When you say like, Solana's won the consumer chain aspect, I didn't really appreciate that was the true also in these emerging markets. Maybe we could double click a bit more on, like the Solana launch decision and all of that. Like obviously you've given us some color there. Obviously like Solana has its own like flagship high-end device as well with like the Saga phone. Like how do you guys see yourselves as a complement to that? And we'd love to just get a bit more color on that front.
Yep. Let me start with the Saga first. I own a few Sagas. I own a few Seekers that are gonna come soon. Like I think it's a great product. Emmett is a great guy. Like I love the team as well. Like I said, right, different paths, different ideologies from the get-go for the company, where Saga is trying to disrupt the App Store, which I love. Anyone that's built an app before, Google Play or iOS, knows how BS it is in the middleman service. And they shipped mainly to US and Canada. Now, JAMBO is obviously, we're Android. So literally we have our own centralized software, but that's because we can't be distributing to so many countries and working with so many distributors if you weren't. But we also have a dApp store for PWAs and various dApps and Web3 that aren't out in the App Store yet that are our partners. So I say that's probably the main difference. We ship to more global and are trying to tackle different issues of onboarding users directly versus the primary of disrupting the App Store. But yeah, a lot of people ask me this, James, why are you guys on Solana when they have a phone? And then I'll say, hey, we're not a phone company. And they're like, you crazy. So I'm glad to clear this up a little bit. Now, Solana consumer chain, right? Like, I'm not saying this because our token's launching on Solana and like I have friends in Solana, right? Like I've been in this industry for a minute, like since I graduated in 2017, like full time in this industry. I'll send some case studies to you. I'll show you influencers in Nigeria to influencers in Argentina, not just Web3 KOLs. I'm talking just local KOLs that tell users how to save money, how to earn money, like how to hedge against inflation, not like, hey, buy this meme coin and all that. And then they got into a lot of meme coin stuff with liquidity. But I don't think that was a spark, because even before the meme coin stuff there, we were already using SPL payment rails and seeing Solana everywhere, which the meme coins probably started about a year ago. So I'll put it that way. Yeah.
All makes sense. So yeah, I want to go and then double click on, obviously you've emphasized you're not a phone company. That's not where like the meat's being made. Like, talk us through what the sort of different components of this ecosystem are, right? You obviously have like the hardware network. You mentioned the wallet. Obviously you have some capacity to like curate pre-installs and, help promote partner titles. Like, yeah, give us an overview of the ecosystem, all these different components, and then we can dig into like, yeah, where you guys are planning to sort of monetize all of that.
100%. So just a quick overview. JAMBO wallet, supporting their Onchain, that's your wallet. That's where you can store your tokens. That's also where, if there are airdrops or et cetera for JAMBO, for reward community members, that's where it is. So please make sure after you have your phone, you do at least one quest inside of the JAMBO app. That's a big part of the activation. We have JAMBO Earn, where there's various quests and other opportunities set up where you literally turn your time into money on the phone. We have the applications that are split between other ecosystems that we curate to provide for users to enter. Now, what does that even mean? For example, partnerships with even other L1s that we put their wallets and other applications in, and have you set up these feedback loops for users to go in there, earn their tokens, spend time inside, see what they like, give feedback to community. And on the other side, we have games where purely is because, number one, they're honestly very fun games, whether you go Matrix Fire, Call of the Void, etc. I know you're deep in Web3 gaming. Obviously, the narrative isn't where it was before. And that one big killer, I feel like app hasn't come out yet. But, when it does, maybe a big part of it is new people, new users coming into crypto, and seeing that loop and saying, wow, this game is fun and I get to earn tokens, etc. in it. And then a big part, I think one of the largest part, is the connectivity, where we want to provide internet connectivity and just access to users in general. Because even if they have the phone without internet, that is still a very big issue. And if they have internet, honestly, they can use the phone or their JAMBO account anywhere. So it's a few different parts to our ecosystem. Happy to dive into any of the parts, but at the end of the day, I think it all centers around our J token and how to reward our users.
No, absolutely. All makes sense there. I guess, yeah. So out of the existing sort of install base, right, you got 7 million wallet users, obviously about 700K mobile devices actually sold. And you mentioned like some of these users are like 5 to 6 hours a day of like usage time. Like, what are you guys seeing in terms of the predominant ways that like the ecosystem is being leveraged right now?
Yes, sir. JAMBO app probably has the highest usage time. And I think that's because if a user bought our phone, they will use our wallet as their native wallet. That's one. And two, in order to interact with the other apps and earn tokens from them, they also have to see a lot of the quests that are inside our app. So I think a big part is users directly on the JAMBO app. Second is honestly just using the phone however they want to. Like, we've seen users literally delete all the apps from our phone. The only one you can't physically from the OS level delete is JAMBO app. And then they just install whatever else they wanted to use. So I'm assuming this is someone that might have just needed a phone that wanted to test out the Web3 aspect, maybe didn't like how we're presenting it, and say, let me just use this as a regular phone. The wallets created, why there's only 700K phones sold, but there's over 7 million wallets, is it's on Google Play. So you can directly download John app with any Android device. So, and I'll put this out there as well. You don't need to be using the Web3 things inside this phone. You can use it as a regular phone. So yeah, I think a lot of the time is spent around these two parts.
Super interesting. And then, yeah, one of the things that I'm very curious to hear your view on is like, you mentioned the deepen aspect, right? Obviously, you are sort of building this network of hardware. What does that look like as it stands, and like how are you guys hoping that will evolve?
Yes, sir. I honestly think Jumbo today is probably one of the largest existing like hardware networks in general in crypto, and probably prime for deepen. If you look at our network of phones together, right now I'm diving into just specifically what one phone does, what one user does inside one phone. But if we can zoom out and you think about the bigger picture, in a network of over 700K phones, we currently have, I think, a bit over 38 mil gigabytes of storage availability and 650,000 plus compute nodes. Now, that means essentially we built a foundational infrastructure for users, for ourselves to handle the data storage, compute, and communication directly with our users. And we create the lowest cost basis of production at 69. So that can essentially plug into a lot of different partners and components directly in. One step like cyber resistance, right? Giving an airdrop to users and to community is a big step for bootstrapping liquidity and for a go-to-market strategy for a company. Nothing wrong with that. The issue that a lot have seen from previous airdrops and launches, not to name any names, is a lot of farming, a lot of just a lot of farming, right? So how can you be cyber resistant? So we have certain countermeasures to this set up in the Jumbo phone and the Jumbo app. And this is essentially, as a user now, as another company, say you want to tap in like, hey, Jumbo, I want to access these users, these user bases, do XYZ, and these cyber resistant. And most importantly, to distribute my token to a lot more holders, we can put you in place to do that now, directly through our phone, directly to our users, through all the data that we can see. I think that's a great aspect of owning the entire stack. But yes, I think creating passive income for a lot of users, using our decentralized storage network, et cetera, is probably pretty important for us moving forward this year.
Absolutely. No, it's interesting to see and curious to see how that piece of the puzzle evolves. I wanted to kind of talk through then, like in order of, I suppose, imminence and also just like priority or focus, like what are kind of the like revenue streams then within the ecosystem? Like what are the primary areas that you're looking to sort of monetize this near term?
Yes, sir. Number one, we will provide token swapping. I know we have various partners, tokens, etc., multi-chain setup. So for our own DEX, a lot of fees. Even going into more on the questing side, Jumbo users can receive J tokens rewards, but honestly, by actively participating in the ecosystem, a lot of how we monetize this between whether our partners and our users, from like literally like crazy amounts of transactions from every quest and submission that we have. Discounts, like working with real world other companies, providing discounts, codes, and other fees taken away by using the Jumbo token. On future products, there's a lot of parts where you have to have the J token natively to interact, and you will only be able to get certain things or certain access by staking it within our ecosystem as well. So we're trying to blend together not only the Web3 aspects of token syncs, from staking, alleviate sell pressure, provide users rewards, to also do more real world aspects, revenue. We break even on the phone currently, but what is to say any other product line or whatever else we do, we can adjust margin. And when you hit scale and bigger scale, like I feel like we've hit certain scale right now that we're able to triple the specs at still the same price. But I think when we can hit the numbers that we're hitting this year, because last year was purely retail, like every phone we sold was to a human being, like a retail user. And obviously some probably like, you see one contract address from Korea ordering 100 phones. Maybe that's just one person, not 100. But this year, there's a lot of 2B contracts with telcos, with other government entities directly that we're going to be moving quite a bit of phones. So I hope with this scale, a bunch of our revenue and profits can also come from within the phone itself.
Amazing. And then, yeah, you kind of touched on the the J token there. J for James or Jambo? Which way did you go about that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, would love to just double click on that a bit. Like, yeah, what's kind of the role of the token in the ecosystem broadly, and kind of how you're thinking through sort of value across that. I know you touched on a few pieces there, so like, yeah, feel free to kind of, rehash lightly. But yeah, curious on that front.
Yes, sir. Please, anyone listening, our tokenomics is actually, I don't know when this is going to come out, but tokenomics for us releases on TGE date, so literally in a few. So feel free to check out the full report. Team worked very hard on it. But essentially, most of our token rewards, our token sinks or token burns are going to come from directly inside a lot of the functions in the phone at the moment. It's because Jambo is not purely on chain. We actually have a lot of real world sort of ties, whether from supply chain, distribution, etc. So a lot of how our users are set up is also not purely on chain, which is probably different from many other products. So they actually understand a lot more when our tokenomics is set up for certain regions and certain things. For example, you never see a crypto product that is able to directly recharge some of your real world like use cases, whether from your electricity bill to your phone bill to providing various. So actually there is for certain of that. But for Jambo, I think we'll be able to use the J token to access a lot of these things. So I don't want to go into the full tokenomics here in unit details, but a lot of it is going to be set up around our users and phone.
Awesome. And then, yeah, and like, so you mentioned also in the token use case front, around like obviously discounts, like rewards for questing. Would love to understand that a bit better. Like, so these partners that you're, actually running the quests for, like, are they basically sponsoring these programs and distributing some of their own tokens alongside this stuff? Or like, how are you thinking through that?
Yes, sir. So it's actually a mix of both, where our partners have a budget for users for doing things and participating in their on-chain activities. And secondly, previously we provided Jumbo points, which is essentially going to convert to certain use cases, and most likely one of the biggest ones converted to Jumbo tokens and certain airdrops and other formats that come with it. So yes, right now, when you inside of our phone, inside of the app, any user that comes in, you essentially have access to an array of like partners tokens and the J token itself in the form of the points at the moment.
That's awesome. Yeah, pretty excited to see with token launch and everything. Phone shipping with its native token as well is going to be pretty interesting to see. Obviously, we saw something kind of close enough with Bonk and the Saga phones, but it'll be cool to see you going full, fully leaning into that basically. So excited to see how things evolve post TGE.
Yeah,
You mentioned,
bro. If you look at, sorry, not to cut you off there, but even if you look at Bonk and Saga on that drop, Saga being the platform, Bonk being the token, a partner, right? And that's just one partner in one ecosystem, in Solana that did this. So like imagine this on a wider scale, but obviously it's not really replicable based on how Bonk has become today and the unit economics that was airdrop. But that thesis of having that platform and then having partners being able to tap into it is a large part of Jumbo.
mm-hmm. Absolutely, no, I'm excited to see all of that. I wanted to ask then as well, like, maybe you could talk us through a bit more, like obviously your background, how you guys grew up has like lent a lot of insights into Africa. But like more broadly in terms of the global emerging market focus, like maybe you could just talk us through a bit of like the key markets you're going after, like where you're seeing the most resonance so far. And yeah, some of the high level stats to that effect.
Yes, sir. So right now our largest market is actually Latin America. And I refer Africa a lot, and even our messaging when the company started, I think on the last pod too, because genuinely I thought Africa would be our largest market, being that I'm from Africa, a lot more connections there. But now we've sold, about a bit over 700,000 phones. You can just look at data, and Latin America is just number one, and that's probably attributed to the fact that certain countries has had hyperinflation. They already have digital payment methods cross border like Pix, in Brazil. So they're used to it, and there's probably a bit more connectivity in general. But put it this way, Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, some of our largest markets. Some numbers, even for problems that we're trying to solve with stable coins, et cetera, inside of our app, which you can get into, like Mexico, around 60 bill of remittance every year, 3.4% of the GDP of Mexico. but there's a 6 to 10% fee to transfer those funds. Now that is literally an order of magnitude of like 100x, that you can save for the country, for people, by using stable coins and by using certain products. So I say stable coins in the essence of Web3 and crypto products and a lot of what we're tapping into. So touching on around the globe, I think Latin America, that is some of the parts we see. But even me, right? I went to high school in Hong Kong, and there's a huge Filipino workforce in Hong Kong that sends remittances and money back to Philippines, and that is also like T+3, T+5, 8% fees to do this weekly, and the Western Unions are killing. But right now, our largest markets, you see Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, probably top 3 in Southeast Asia, and that is probably a lot because they have a lot of talent that is exported that is sending money back home, like many other countries with a workforce that's going out. So a big part of us as well is tapping into that.
Absolutely. One of the things that I find super crazy as well is like obviously all these countries that you're active in is also managing like the on and off ramps as well, right? I believe you guys have done some work, especially in a number of African countries around like facilitating this. Maybe you could talk us through like that journey and how difficult that process has been, and like any challenges you focus there, like that you find or encounter there. Sorry, because I feel like to have the full end-to-end offering, being able to sort of integrate and help navigate those pieces as well is like an insane utility, obviously, to people in all of these markets. And so, any insights you can share there would be interesting.
Yes, sir. I think any emerging market, right? Banking. When you are in crypto and you're in honestly any market, banking is probably one of the number one parts you need to start off on. And I'll just use Africa example. There's a lot of neobanks in Africa, but there's only a handful of actually TradFi banks. So say you get a neobank, that's all well and good, but by tomorrow morning, you don't know if your funds will still be there, if your account is still open. But if you can get someone like an Echo Bank, right, that has branches in over 30 countries in Africa, that is something that really sets your company already apart and with a foundational basis. Now, I think a very big part of sort of doing business and in emerging markets or having infrastructure set up is honestly a large part around having these foundational parts, whether it's banking, whether it's how to pay payroll, whether it's employee sourcing. I think that's all very important. Sorry, what was the first part to the question, Piers?
I was just wondering in terms of I guess for me it's also like the off ramps, right? So like you get stable coin payments in. Like I'm just wondering what the process for people like spending stuff there. As you say, it literally is 100x cost savings if they can do this. But then that kind of last mile, if you like, feels like quite a challenge. So I'm curious how you're navigating that and kind of helping users navigate that as well.
Yep. Sorry. So I said all the banking stuff to say this is how you can get into on and off ramping. You need to have that entire structure set up. Now, for JAMBO specifically, it's very hard for us to be in over 100 countries and have that set up in over 100 countries just from licensing and a time span point. They multiple like publicly listed, Web2 TradFi companies have a hard time doing that. So the next best option is honestly to be working with the professionals that are centered around doing it in that specific region. So for example, in LATAM, use Transact. In Africa, you can use a blend of working with Yellow Card, which provides the exchange option from local currency, which they have their own order books. In, for example, Nigeria, they have Naira, right? In Cameroon, they have the local currency. In Botswana, they have the local currency. And then you can actually work with them to do so. But then there also might be weaker in South Africa. That's where you need to come in with Valor or possibly another company that's stronger there. So in LATAM, it's a bit more streamlined, I'd say. You can work with Transact and a few other like big guys. But in most areas, you probably have to find in that specific jurisdiction and country and have a conversation with a third-party provider to be working with them. And then the integration into your app and into your system, that's a whole other timeline and conversation even to start. So I think probably the issue with on-off ramping and for crypto companies, and I say crypto company because most likely they don't live in that region if it's an emerging market, because I feel like most crypto is still in the main countries, then you have to work with the local, so the company that knows it. Then after you go through that process a few months very slowly, then the integration part might be very slow. So it's how do you expedite all that and to be asking the right questions and set up for your users?
Yeah, super interesting. I'm also curious as well, like how much of a focus is sort of surfacing some of these like, on-chain yield generation opportunities for your users. Like I feel like for a lot of people in these markets, being able to not have savings nuked to begin with is exciting. But then, when you look at like some of the yield available on chain, from a variety of products, whether that's like SUSDE or whatever, yeah, I'm curious, curious how you've seen appetite for that kind of stuff so far, because I would have thought it's, a pretty amazing thing to be able to promote there.
Yes, sir. So actually, can't announce yet, but we're working with a few providers right now to actually have more yield provisions directly within the Jumbo application instead of having them to go to a third party. I think it's something that is not discussed as widely amongst like the young, because generally in these regions, the users using crypto and they're caught on, it's just a very young population, right? You look at Africa, the youngest continent ever, and amongst young people, a lot of it is word of mouth. So as it spreads and they see the yield opportunities, then it becomes bigger. But for sure, when we started off, that was not the number one like killer product. Hey, I can, provide you yield on your capital. It's more like, how do I help you first earn that capital? Then if you choose to leave a portion of it into our, bank, which is our wallet, et cetera, then we provide you with other value on services. But I don't think it starts and begins there.
Absolutely. Makes sense. Makes sense. And then, yeah, I'm also curious, like, where you see kind of the challenge. A lot of people suggest that, the kind of emerging markets, especially some of the ones you're going after in Africa, maybe are like sort of lower monetization potential, right? Like, even if you scale to the huge user numbers, like, your sort of like revenue opportunities per user or whatever are kind of significantly lower. So curious what your take is on that. I'm a diehard believer in Africa. Like, I'm super excited by the trajectory broadly of increased, connectivity and digitization. Obviously, you and I have shared lots of discussions around all of that. And, I'm enormously excited by like the potential of, not only this sort of like trend of technology leapfrogging, but like, all the stuff that's happening now in terms of even look at like whatever these LLMs, what it's doing to education and democratizing access to all of that kind of stuff. I'm a big believer in the whole, talent is evenly is evenly distributed and opportunity is not. And so I'm curious for your perspective on this, and maybe any insights you can share based on all of your travels and evangelizing down there.
No, for sure. I think just from our go to market, it's pretty obvious to us. Like when a lot of people are like, how does Jambo actually go to market in these regions? Like, how do you convince people to use crypto? How do they convince people to use Jambo? I'm like, we ain't convincing anybody to use crypto. Like they've been using it. They've been doing it, right? This, like you talk about low user, I mean, for a traditional like Web 2, TradFi, if you just look at per user, how much you're spending, et cetera, yes, a user from a emerging market, maybe from Brazil, from Argentina, is probably lower than a user you get from the States. But the also difference is for that user, when he does it, it's a necessity, right? He's using your product as a necessity, and he's going to onboard more of his friends to use your product if it's actually a necessity. And in these emerging markets, a big part is like whether you look at stable coins, hedging against inflation, providing them that bank account through the wallet, providing them earn opportunities, literally out in a household of like, say, 10 people in some emerging markets, some in countries in Africa, only 1 or 2 work. And you're providing those opportunities. So I'd say it's a much faster growth rate. But yes, if you just compare like direct numbers, it'll definitely be lower. And I also say, most people there, I don't think we educated people on, hey, come and use Jambo, come and use crypto. It was a big surprise when we saw how many people already were using and knew about crypto, but they're just not connected to the crypto that we know, which is a lot of the SUSD and the products that we're probably looking at every day. They're more looking at, how do I send money to my boy in Nigeria from Kenya using Tron, USDT, right? Like over 90% of the world is using that because it had a first mover advantage, but it's also just cheap and they don't do any branding. They don't need to. So I think in many of these parts, it's how do you hit that sweet spot?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm curious then, you kind of touched on this idea of endgame being on-chain Apple, which I like. It's a good, it's a good goal, of course. But maybe you can talk us through, just like the vision from here on out a bit more, right? Like obviously this year you got a pretty big milestone coming up with the token launch and kind of kickstarting that sort of ecosystem flywheel. What does like this year look like? And then, the 10-year, what does the Jambo domination look like?
Yes, sir. So far for Jambo, I think we've democratized or at least been censorship resistant to hardware by owning the hardware specs ourselves. The next step for Jambo is being actually resistant to connectivity and providing internet access to our users anyone that has Jumbo device anywhere around the world. And a big part that I'll share here is Jumbo is launching a satellite program, and we're going to be launching a satellite into space in 2024, hopefully. Sorry.
2025, I hope.
No,
But
2025. Sorry. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
but I mean, wait, you're gonna have to tell us more on this. What exactly is going on? Where is this satellite launching? What is it doing?
Yep. So let me go into why we're doing this, right? Expanding connectivity, empowering crypto native actual ecosystems, and like honestly future proofing a lot of data access, especially when you have a lot of data as a company like ourselves in hardware and stuff. Now, how can you actually do that? Like, bro, launch a satellite into space, Elon Musk type stuff. So there's honestly a few different ways, right? You can have the low hanging fruit of buying data, working with a third party provider, like a 3P, third party provider provides you the data, you work with their satellite, and you might actually still be able to make a lot of this happen, like a Starlink. The more direct and what Jambo is focusing on is actually launching our own satellite into space. And, that's like, on a there I'll go into later on how many satellites are on a rocket and what we've looked into and what's our partners and provisions and how we're able to come into the timeline of 2024 being able to do this. But end of the day, it's we want to own that stack of also sending our own satellite up. Now, even more expanding on the white part, like you look at users right now, pretty much mobile data is a currency in itself in a lot of these emerging markets, right? Like for us, we are on phone data plans that renew itself using our credit cards. It might even be using a decentralized Solana solution like Helium if you're in the States. But when you're in these emerging markets, you have connectivity 24/7, better internet connectivity, honestly, than even some regions that I live in, like in the US. The issue, though, is that the connectivity is monopolized by a few telcos from that region because they probably built up that infrastructure themselves. And that's why you see a lot of people in Brazil or Nigeria, they have multiple phones because from telco A to telco A, it's like, say, 1 cent. From telco A to telco B, it's like an order of magnitude more expensive to do anything, text or call. So yeah, for Jambo, number one, even beyond working with a middle provider for internet access and anything like that, if we can provide this ourselves, it's just a world of opportunities of keeping our devices online and tapping into even other sectors.
I mean, I applaud the goal. It seems like a pretty bold undertaking. But I'm excited to see how all of that goes. There was meant to be that wasn't there some funding that Doge was meant to be getting sent to the moon and it's been pushed back like 10 times. But I think still hoping Elon makes it happen, the Doge mission to the moon. So maybe we can take a Jambo phone up with it, but we'll see.
Yeah.
I also was curious for your perspective. Like, you mentioned basically since you graduated, you've been full time in this space. Like, what are some of the key learnings from like the Jambo journey so far that you might be able to share with us? Like, what do you wish you knew when you were starting out that you know now?
Hardware is tough. I ain't gonna lie. Like many other entrepreneurs and much older, wiser people than me, honestly gave me a lot of advice before starting Jumbo. Is that you might not, even the factories we're sourcing and working with, like, look at this kid coming in here, 20 something, trying to make it in the hardware space, doesn't know how competitive it is. It's probably, even more competitive than starting a clothing line right now selling on TikTok. So I'd say we got very lucky to be able to do the numbers that we've done so far. But honestly, a big learning is just how hard hardware is, and honestly, that's a moat in itself for our team, and we're very proud of that. But end of the day is we just know it's not a very easy undertaking because for each, even like Jumbo Phone 1 and Jumbo Phone 2, that took a lot of engineer design, product design to make it happen. Like the color part might be what people notice the most, from black and white to black and gold to light blue, but that's probably the easiest part. So I say number one is hardware. It really is tough. Number two, not all of crypto is on the apps that you use every day. Like I think my screen time, if I pull up my phone, is more on WhatsApp than on Telegram even, which is crazy because, all of my colleagues, every minute of my day is spent in the industry, but all of our communities that are in, for us in crypto is on WhatsApp, and they have their own whole ecosystems there. So how do we tap into like WhatsApp, like organic marketing and getting to those users? Three, let's see, not to sound cliche, but but co-founder. I think Chow at Alliance DAO said this as the best co-founder is someone you're really close to that you never had to think about. Number two, it would be a single co-founder doing it yourself. And third would be probably a co-founder with someone that you met recently, because there's just issues that are going to come up, fights are going to come up you don't know, and you're hard to resolve those if you don't know each other. I think I'm fortunate to have my sister as my co-founder, that we grew up together in Africa, went through civil war together twice, escaped twice, then both went to school in New York. Obviously, she's better in Columbia, me at NYU, but things like that. So yeah, a few of these types of lessons, I guess.
Good man. I love all of that. And then, yeah, I always like to ask guests, we're all operating in this very digital world. What do you regard as the most impactful digital experience you've ever had?
The most impactful digital experience. I haven't had that like coffee moment where you travel to like El Salvador and you go to a cafe and you pay in Bitcoin. I honestly haven't experienced that. It's probably seeing how much of our community already knew about crypto, to be honest with you, bro. Like this goes back to the last question as well, but when I started the journey, I thought we were like, our first go-to-market, I don't know if you remember, was a learn to earn campaign, like a 10-week program where we give users tokens for learning about XYZ, etc. But yeah, after that, it was like everyone pretty much already knew about crypto in some way or form. You just had to bring them into like a structure, if that makes sense. And that structure might be with the infrastructure. Yeah, most impactful digital experience, if it's already people in our community using crypto, or I'd say maybe using all the apps that I use every day on the JAMBO phone, not to show ourselves too hard, but like when I'm able to hold because I have 3 phones. I have an iPhone, I have a Samsung, and then I have my JAMBO phone. It's just I'm on each operating system. I'm not on the Huawei operating system. But yeah, so like testing all of these has been interesting, and seeing it run on the JAMBO phone along with the others, and like, oh, we built this. Yeah.
Good man. Good man. Well, James, it's a pleasure having you on, and very excited for all things, JAMBO this year. Excited to see how the launch goes, and I'll be keeping an eager eye on the satellite launch as and when that happens. It sounds very exciting. For those listening, where's the best place for them to get involved and keep tabs on things?
Please follow at JAMBO Technology. But if there's just one thing you take away from this call, it's make sure if you have a phone to do a quest inside the phone. And if you don't order a phone, it's not too late. A big part of our upcoming token generation event, and a part of what we're doing is rewarding a bunch of our users and community. So yeah, please find us on X, and look forward to hearing any feedback on Twitter.
Good man. You heard it here. You heard it here. Get a phone, do some quests. James, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for the time.
Appreciate you, fam.